Welcome back to the Austin Sew Along. Today is our final day, day 12, and it's the day that a lot of people are dreading. We put in all of our buttonholes and then attach our buttons. All right, so I'll be demoing on view B because I just think it's easier to see the thread, but view A is the same steps. So you can see on this side, I've already inserted my buttonholes, and the buttonholes are going to go on the front because we want the front to be smooth going into the back. So the buttons will go on the back button band. Now in your pattern, you'll have two templates for the buttons and buttonholes, one for the bodice and one for the skirt. I have a little bit of a dog ate my homework situation going on here, sometime between putting the buttonholes in the other side and filming this video. Someone took a bite out of my pattern piece. So we will demo with the skirt. So here at the top, it says waistline edge. So this is going to align with the waistline seam. And then here is the side seam edge. And that is the edge here. So we'll be marking our buttonholes using this. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to pin it in place. And whether you're making view A or view B, you're going to have the same amount of buttons and buttonholes. But we do have cut here for view A and cut here for view B if needed. All right, so our guide is pinned in place. And now we need to mark our buttonholes. Now here we have the length of the buttonhole marked, and this is for the recommended button size. But I do think that you should do some practice buttonholes based on your specific buttons that you have gotten. Here is a little test I've done to make sure that my button fits through my buttonhole. And it is a bit larger than the marked button. I had a hard time finding buttons to go with this. So make sure that your buttonhole corresponds to your specific button, not just to what's marked. Now what we're going to do is mark where the buttonholes start. I don't mark the end point. It doesn't matter. You've already determined the length that you need. I'm just pretty much putting the placement at this point. Take off your guide. And then here I have a little pin where each of my buttonholes is going to go. Now, since my buttonhole is a bit wider, I am going to mark a new start point. And I'm just doing that with a pencil because my buttonhole will cover it. Not a big deal. You can use chalk. It's just easier for you guys to see if I use a pencil. Now I have marked my top buttonholes based on the distance between each of those. So now that I have all these marked, we're going to head over to the machine and we're going to insert our buttonholes. All right, so I have my buttonhole foot on, and every person's machine is different. So this is how mine works, but yours may not look identical at this point. I'm going to sink my needle in the start point and then make the buttonhole. Then you're just going to continue working through all the buttonholes. All right, so you can see our buttonholes are in. We're going to go ahead and cut them open. Now I like to use a buttonhole chisel to cut mine open. I know a lot of people like to use seam rippers. I have seen many people just right through their whole garment, even with the pin at the side. You hit the pin and then you go off to the side, sometimes instead of stopping. And that is just heartbreaking, especially because we did all this beautiful top stitching. So I highly recommend a buttonhole chisel. It comes with this little block of wood. You just pop it underneath and chisel right through. And you get a beautiful buttonhole opening. So we're going to repeat that for all 85,000 buttons that I made you all, or buttonholes that I made you all put in. I know, that's not really 85,000. What's it like? 12 or 14 or something? I don't even know. All right, so after we have cut open all of our buttonholes, the only thing we have left to do is to add the buttons. Now I mentioned that on the button and buttonhole template, we do have the button placement marked. I personally do not use this to mark my buttons, but it is marked if you would like to. I use my actual buttonholes. So to mark my button placement off of my buttonholes, I'm just going to align the button bands. So here we have the top. Then I'm going to align the waistline seam and the hem. Between these, and then we just have these buttonholes at the bottom. Now the buttonholes will want to pull open, so make sure you're aligning the edges. All right. So now that our button bands are pinned together, I'm going to just place a pin through each buttonhole. This way I know the buttons exactly align with where the buttonholes are. And don't worry about the sideways placement of the buttons at this point. We will cover that in a moment. Okay, unpin the rest of our button band. Now, for the buttons placement within the width of the button band, when your button band When your buttons are closed, this is going to be the point of stress on the button. So if you place the button over here, it has the ability to pull away and these won't perfectly align. So rather than placing the button directly in the center, I'm just going to place it over towards this line here, like 1/8 of an inch. So I'll be doing that at the machine so you can see. So I have my button sew-on foot on my machine. This means I can sew my buttons on my machine. You can see it's just got these 2 little padded feet that's set on the button, and then it zigzags between. I will be doing a cross on my button, and I also have changed my thread to black to match the button. If you don't have a button sew-on foot, you can use a foot made for zigzagging and just zigzag between the two. So then you just snip, snip. And reposition to do the other side. And I always sink my needle by hand first because you don't want to hit the button. So now, since the front of the buttonhole butts right up against the shank, we get a nice alignment on our button bands. Now that all of our buttons are attached, to create your side seam or to button your side seam, all you have to do is just button it all together. And that is it. All right, so that is it for the Austin sew along. You should be very proud of yourself. Not only did you sew a dress, you also inserted about 16 buttonholes and added 17 buttons to the dress. So congrats on that. You're now a button pro. So I hope you enjoy wearing your dress as much as I enjoyed sewing along with you guys. I'm very excited. I now have 2 new dresses to wear. So that is it for the Austin sew along. Thanks for joining us, and I'll see you back here for whatever we have planned next. Bye-bye.